Brexit means
Brexit. It's been quite the year for everyone's favourite argument. 2018 ends pretty much as it began, without a final deal and a ton of uncertainty about what lies ahead. Let's look back on the Brexity highlights of the last 12 months. The most important moment of the year was just before last Christmas. The joint report between the UK and the EU in December was the first time we heard about the infamous Irish border backstop. Had the Brexiteers read these words more carefully, they might not have been so surprised about what the final deal looked like.
the reality is that we all need to face up to some hard facts.
The next flashpoint came when Theresa May delivered her Mansion House speech. In essence, she prescribed the softest form of hard Brexit, riling some of her more Eurosceptic colleagues. But the approach set out at Mansion House went nowhere, so Mrs May gathered the cabinet at Chequers, her delightful country residence, to agree on an even softer approach. The UK finally described an achievable future economic partnership a mere 2 years after the vote to leave. Not everyone was happy. Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson quit over the proposals, following David Davis, the Brexit Secretary. Progress was tepid throughout the autumn. Mrs May went to Salzburg to personally try and get a breakthrough with the EU leaders. Instead, she managed to annoy the 27 other countries and was rebuffed for her efforts. Meanwhile, at Labour's annual conference, the opposition party put the possibility of another referendum on the table for the first time. Jeremy Corbyn has tried to deny it ever since.
Daydreaming about a Britannia that both rules the waves and waves the rules.
Then it was Theresa May's turn. The dancing queen recovered from Salzburg to warm the cockles of her party's heart. She promised to deliver a clean Brexit, and they loved it. In the same month, over 700,000 people turned up in London to call for another referendum. But at that point, no major politician was listening. Then suddenly, in November, a breakthrough, a Brexit deal, but it looked an awful lot like what was outlined over the past year. And for Brexit Minister Dominic Raab and some of his colleagues, it was all too much compromise. More resignations ensued. Eurosceptic MPs, such as the omnipresent Jacob Rees-Mogg, began to call on Mrs May to resign. And finally, we are back to where we started. Mrs May is increasingly fragile. So much so that the Prime Minister opted not to put her deal to a vote in the House of Commons. For her efforts, she was handed a no-confidence motion in her position. The Prime Minister emerged successful, although 117 of her MPs voted against her. And to round off the year, she made one last trip to Brussels, only to be rebuffed yet again. She finds herself leaving 2018 with the year ahead looking decidedly cloudy, or, as you might say, nebulous.